Hey there, folks. I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. I think this might actually be the first week we've had in the Hot 100 in a while where I can actually say it feels normal. Yeah, it's in the reset after an album bomb, but it was a small one, and with the release schedule drying up for a couple of weeks, it's probably gonna be the closest we get to a summer lull, and I at least appreciate that. Just kind of unfortunate to say when you look at our top 10, particularly our number 1, and Stay by Kid Laroi and Justin Bieber is still squatting on top. Sure, you can argue it's just winning on the streaming margins, but given its stability on the sales and how it's racing up the radio, I get the depressing feeling we're gonna stick around with this for a decent bit. Lovely. And at this point, with Good For You by Olivia Rodrigo holding its ground on the radio but not able to pick up traction anywhere else, it's just honestly getting a little bit sad. But what is getting traction is Bad Habits by Ed Sheeran up to number 3. Yeah, that grime remix was better than it had any right to be, but for me, if this is gonna seriously challenge for the number 1, it's really just a race against time. Radio traction versus the streaming and sales that are both starting to collapse. And yet, to my surprise, right behind it is Kiss Me More by Doja Cat featuring SZA, which looks like it's finally starting to fizzle on the radio and streaming as the sales are long gone. But it did hold over Levitating by Dua Lipa down at number 5, where it's finally falling back on the radio, and despite some residual traction on other channels, it's probably losing most on the streaming margins here. But then we've got a new debut in the top 10, Take My Breath by The Weeknd at number 6. I'll talk more about the song later on, but apparently it's the lead-off single for his next album, which seems to have a bizarrely quick turnaround time, but this saw a strong debut in all channels, especially just how fast he got this shipped to radio. Looks like Republic is not taking any chances with this one. Then we got Butter by BTS down at number 7. Yes, it's still selling ridiculously well, but radio seems pretty much done with it, and you can tell this is gonna fade out pretty quickly as the momentum starts to peter out. Then we got Industry Baby by Lil Nas X and Jack Harlow at number 8, and for a song that was trying to sound so triumphant on the fact that it's going to number 1, and all it really has now is streaming and YouTube as the radio struggles to catch up, it does feel a bit weird. But then Montero, Call Me By Your Name by Lil Nas X is at number 9, which has some radio, but it's also on a steady decline. Finally, we got Deja Vu by Olivia Rodrigo at number 10, where all it really has now is radio, and you can tell it's actually starting to slip there. Finally. But on that note, our losers and dropouts, and we actually got some pretty notable ones in the latter category. Build a Bitch by Bella Poarch is gone after running longer than I really thought she would. Way Less Sad by AJR, it didn't become their next big hit. Tombstone by Rod Wave looks like it's falling short of the year-end list, unfortunately. But clinching their spots, we got Best Friend by Sweetie and Doja Cat, and Mood by 24kGoldn featuring Ian Dior finally making its exit. Also One Too Many by Keith Urban and Pink is gone as well, and it's about damn time. Glad Billboard was done propping up that charade, even if the calculations have it making the year-end list for 2021. But you know what, easy targets aside, most of the losers this week, they are not that surprising. Skate by Silk Sonic slipped off the debut to 35, Drinkin' Beer, Talkin' God, Amen by Chase Rice featuring Florida Georgia Line hit 38 as Nashville radio started rotating it out. Permission to Dance by BTS fell hard to 55 because all it has were sales, and that's drying up. NDA by Billie Eilish slid back to 77 because the album bomb is gone. And continuing to tank, we got Ball If I Want To by DaBaby at 91, and Not Sober by The Kid Laroi featuring Polo G and Stunna Gambino at 92. Now, as expected, in the wake of an album bomb fading, we would get a bunch of gains and returns. But I gotta be honest here, I'm not really sure how to read some of these. Yeah, we get the expected low-end bounce back of Twerkulator by City Girls at 98, or Next Girl by Carly Pierce at 96. But seeing Was Your Name by Tyler the Creator featuring Youngboy Never Broke Again and Ty Dolla $ign at 94 did kind of surprise me, given as it doesn't seem to have much of an industry push really moving behind it. Even more surprising was Woman by Doja Cat catching a rebound off of YouTube to 84, and Cold As You by Luke Combs at 76. I mean, really, Luke Combs, you couldn't push the other guy instead? It's a much better song. But anyway, now to our gains. If anything, they're even more all over the place. but perhaps for good. I like Pipis by Farruko continuing up to 52, and You Should Probably Leave by Chris Stapleton really rebounded well up to 69, but off the debut we also saw You Time by Scotty McCreery at 81, Gaialis by Capella Gray at 78, and Volvi by Aventura and Bad Bunny all the way up to 22. Then we got a bunch of country gains of mixed quality. Cold Beer Calling My Name by Jameson Rogers and Luke Combs at 54, but My Boy by LV Shane at 70, and Memory I Don't Mess With by Lee Brice at 74, that's nice. And the rest is kinda tough to gauge. It looks like Need to Know by Doja Cat has become a real streaming hit at 20, and Traitor by Olivia Rodrigo is getting pushed as the next single to 33. I mean, come on, Brutal was right there. And it also looks like Come Through by Her featuring Chris Brown caught yet another boost at 71. But what I want to focus on here is actually Essence by WizKid featuring Thames up to 44. I'm lukewarm on the song generally, but with the big Justin Bieber remix that's coming, because Lord knows that's what anyone with taste really wants to hear, this is gonna surge. Be prepared for some of that conversation. I don't think it's gonna be all that fun. But you know, while we're there, on a similar note, we're heading into our healthy list of new arrivals, where we gotta start with number 100, Rare by Nas.
My feet on the stars. I rock it like Lenny, think it like Jimmy the first time he seen a guitar. Standing in front of where they shot about us and we gotta know who we are. I'm in rare form.
Okay, so to a lot of folks these days, Nas has been seeing a second wind of success and critical acclaim off his King's Disease albums with Hit Boy, and yet I have not been interested in the slightest. Part of it is how the content and lyrical structure just does not impress me the way that it used to from Nas. Part of it is knowing just how much of this is legacy reinforcement. I remember when Jay-Z was doing it about a decade ago, I didn't care for it then either. And part of it is Nas's anti-vax bars and everything tied with the Khalees situation, which blows holes in his increasingly high-handed moralism. And I know I'm in the minority with this, but it's just kind of hard to shake just having no motivation or curiosity to care about new Nas songs. But he did debut 2 of them this week, this being the first, and look, I don't really feel this, but I get that somebody might. Hit Boy's percussion does knock if the vocals feel a little overcompressed and the blubbery samples sound like they were flipped from an old video game console before all the horns and the woodwinds flicker in behind the buzzy synth. And you know, Nas certainly steps up with some real confidence in a lot of his bragging. He still sounds good on the mic, but when Nas references Nietzsche, it makes a lot of sense in the framing in terms of further elevating those who already have that success, the masters, glorification that feels increasingly hollow, surrounded by a lot of Biggie references, and only the faintest of pleas for the kids to stop beefing with each other. I'm not denying that Nas has skill here, but on another level, I just really don't care. I gotta say it. Number 93, Knowing You by Kenny Chesney.
When you were gonna leave me too soon, but I'd do it all over, 'cause damn, it was good knowing you.
I'll say this, I was surprised that Kenny Chesney was working another single from Here and Now. At least to me, that album came and went in early May of last year, although it was surprisingly selling really well. I mean, it's perhaps the worst possible timing for his usual breezy material, but hey, maybe he thinks that this summer would work better. Well, in the case of a late summer single, this is actually a post-breakup ballad, where he muses about his ex that he actually got to know pretty well, and wishes that she would drift back into his life, but if she doesn't, hell, it was a good experience. He knows her that well. It's honestly the sort of more mature song that I really don't mind hearing from Kenny Chesney, especially as he's sticking with more organic country instrumentation with all the pedal steel and slightly sandy but live drum work. Although that breakdown at the end of the second verse was kind of weird, doesn't really fit. But outside of that, yeah, it's well-timed, a pretty damn good song to boot. It's not exceptional, but I enjoyed this. Nice stuff. Number 88, I Hope You're Miserable Until You're Dead by Nessa Barrett.
I hope you be yourself and lose your friends. I hope they call you out for shit you said. I hope you're miserable miserable until you're dead.
Well, this was just a matter of time. Okay, context. Nessa Barrett is a former TikTok star who got picked up by Warner to start releasing music, likely on the basis of having a massive follower count, and why not optimize that to save your money on promo? It also didn't surprise me that she's worked with Jaden before, so I was expecting some clumsily produced pop rock with a bit of an emo tinge, especially given this song's title. And yet, you know what? I actually think that the production from Evan Blair is above average here. Yeah, the groove's kind of undercooked and the percussion is overemphasized, but the guitars finally have a little bit of crunchy snarl that erupt out of the reverb pretty effectively, and build a pretty decent crescendo on that hook. But the bigger problems are twofold. The first being that this is an astoundingly petty song, a sort of breakup kiss-off where you might expect a little bit of self-awareness or a bit more detail surrounding what this ex actually did, but we get neither, especially as she implies that there's more that she could say to ruin this guy's life. But okay, fine, if this is sold well enough, I might be able to get why it works, but Nessa Barrett is a really underwhelming presence behind the microphone. It's not a baby voice coo or a coquettish bit of theatricality, she just comes across as really small and underpowered to sell a song that's trying to be this vicious, which reinforces my thinking she only got signed in follower count and virality over actual musical talent. I mean, I didn't love Bella Porch's breakthrough either, but it felt more interesting and potent than this. Good production though, I'll give it that. And nothing else. Number 86, Lose by KSI and Lil Wayne. You know, it's funny, just last week and On the Pulse on my main channel, I was on the fence whether or not KSI would ever cross over to the American charts, and yet, with a deluxe single and a Lil Wayne feature, he was able to get here. And you know, full disclosure, the second I heard the watery guitar tone and the cheap trap percussion that felt so emblematic of modern emo rap, I had an idea where this was gonna go. Lil Wayne's never been shy about advertising his fondness for rock music, but what I did not expect was Lil Wayne to start singing the hook all through all those waves of auto-tune. I mean, the first time I heard it, I burst out laughing. I couldn't help myself. Are we doing Rebirth again? Some of us still remember the last time. Or is how this song is actually being planned for Lil Wayne's next project, I Am Not a Human Being 3, as if that's a series that needs another sequel. What's really funny here is that this maybe could have worked. When KSI actually takes the hook with his deeper vocal tone, it actually could sound pretty good if the vocal mixing wasn't a total mess. And while the post-breakup misery doesn't really give KSI that much to work with, I actually think Lil Wayne's verse here is really damn good and focused. More importantly, it feels like a song with an actual identity coming from both acts, and that's really good for KSI. Hell, clean up the goddamn vocal mixing, give the percussion some actual texture and teeth, and keep Lil Wayne away from caterwauling on a hook, and I might be praising this. As it is, I did have way too much fun with this to outright dislike it, but I sure as shit can't defend it unless it somehow winds up growing on me. And that could happen. Fair warning. Number 82, Buy Dirt by Jordan Davis featuring Luke Bryan.
Cause the truth about it is, it all goes by real quick. You can't buy happiness, but you can buy dirt.
You know, Nashville, you don't have to keep on enabling Jordan Davis by calling in a favor from Luke Bryan, of all people, to prop up his career. Now, granted, Luke Bryan's been down this road a couple times before. Some of us still remember This Is How We Roll. But funnily enough, 2014 Florida-Georgia Line does come to mind with this song, because it's literally taking the exact same formula as Dirt and looking to put down roots and playing in more homespun country cliches. And hell, it even shuns a lot of the overproduction that's ruined a lot of Florida Georgia Line and Jordan Davis's music by going for more of a spare acoustic line across a more spacious mix, where the percussion doesn't overpower the song. Now, I could be kind of snide here and say that it's not like future generations like mine are ever going to be able to properly afford real estate en masse, so buying dirt is a lot less of an option in any city, including Nashville. But I think the larger issue is the gap of charisma between Luke Bryan and Jordan Davis. It's vast. Luke Bryan's vocal timbre, it's older, it's richer, he fits the texture of this song better, and Jordan Davis just comes across as really forgettable, which is one major reason this is not as good as Florida Georgia Line's Dirt, for all of its ridiculous optimism and bombast. But you know, in comparison with what most of Jordan Davis has released, it's fine. It's not great. it's not bad either. Number 80, Repeat It by Lil Tecca and Gunna.
Shorty can see Ted. Fuck with the gang and you dead. You should've seen this. Put some dollars on your head. Then I repeat it.
You know, if there's a song that's not worth much analysis, especially in the lyrics, it is this one, coming from two of the most vacant performers in trap of the past couple of years. Kind of a shame because I actually really like this production. The jittery pianos, the wiry plucks, the fast snare, the more propulsive bass that drops back in harder for the hook. It's a really nice touch. Give this beat to a rapper who can do more with it, I would really get behind it. Sadly, we are stuck with Lil Tecca and Gunna, who default to a lot of basic flexing that is unbelievably forgettable, even if they do repeat words to try to get this to actually stick. And yeah, Lil Tecca's got a melodic flow that can flatter it. He may be an A Boogie ripoff, but he is pretty catchy here. But when you realize how little he's actually saying outside of the pure catchiness, I'm not sure there's enough to really make this last longer. Maybe hope for a remix with better rappers? I can dream. Number 79, EPMD 2 by Nas featuring Eminem and EPMD.
We back in business. I visualize what it is, not what it isn't. We at the mafia table next to the kitchen, eating Michelin star, counting a million.
So a song like this is tough for me to talk about, because in terms of pure commercial attention, it's kind of a cool moment. Eminem and Nas on the same track, and they got EPMD their first Hot 100 hit since the early 90s. That's cool, right? And yeah, I think EPMD is often slept on, and two rap nerds using their platform to get them a minor hit, that's pretty cool this late in their career. I honestly wish M did a lot more of that. Well, I would say that, because at first I was actually pretty into this, with Nas building off an old EPMD hook, and then PMD and Eric Sermon trading bars back and forth, and it sounded cool, and even if it's just flexing, backing up the fluttery, choppy sample and the sputtering percussion with all the fuzz, this kind of thing kind of works for a celebration, especially given how much of this song is focused on legacy. And then Eminem comes in, and you know, even if his vocal pickup sounds kind of rough, and the puns he throws across his bars just make me wince, by the time he got to talking about the rappers that we have lost, and the legacy, and reconnecting with 50 Cent, I was really trying to buy into his emotional story here, and then he ends the verse going offbeat for no adequate reason to rattle through a bunch of name dropping, and I'm sorry, it kills the mood. I want to say Eminem is better than this, but he's been doing it all the damn time for the past couple of years. Shame, because I actually want to get behind this song, and now... look, it should be better. Number 67, SUVs Black on Black by Jack Harlow and Pooh Shiesty.
Black on SUVs, black on black. I was fucking up, but now I'm back on track. That's a fact.
Okay, on paper this makes sense. Jack Harlow has yet to fully stabilize his commercial appeal, so why not team up with Pooh Shiesty for a song? Especially if he takes more of the lead as the better rapper. And you know, at first I was into this too. The fluttery horns, the Spanish guitar sample, it's a pretty good compliment to the sandy trap percussion that feels a bit better produced. And even if Jack Harlow is a bit of a goofball, there's no excuse for that life alert line, he is just relaxed and poised enough to really pull me in here. And then Pooh Shiesty shows up. And it reminds me a lot of my issues with Blueface. It's not that he's going off rhythm to sound uncanny or to accentuate some weirder content, it just feels like more like a desperate attempt to be interesting, and it just comes across as incompetent, especially alongside Jack Harlow, who is so technically sound as a rapper. And again, it's not like Pooh Shiesty is witty or interesting with his gunplay or brand name references. He's just a lousy rapper who sounds a little bit like Gucci Mane, but with somehow less talent. So yeah, this might have had promise. Shame we lost all that. It winds up mediocre at best. And finally, number 6, Take My Breath by The Weeknd. So I said this before, I remember thinking it's kind of weird The Weeknd is pushing a new album already, but After Hours did drop nearly a year and a half ago, and it's not his fault that the singles from that project have had such longevity. Now, if I was in his camp, I'd probably take a bit of a break, really refine the songs he has as to not oversaturate the market, but apparently this is his next lead-off single, and given his pretty impressive track record in that department, I did have expectations. And, you know, it's an odd case, I gotta say that. Not so much a clash of genres, but a clash of eras. The vocal line, the tighter bass line, they remind me of late 90s pop a bit, especially with as much as The Weeknd spends in his falsetto, but then there's all these buzzy synthwave tones and the keyboards and the percussion that feels very reminiscent of the 80s, especially with as much as The Weeknd is cribbed openly from Michael Jackson, and still kinda does. I don't know, I'm not sure the fusion is hitting as strongly as I would prefer, even if you can tell that Max Martin is really punching up the melodies. Now granted, that's often true with me in The Weeknd, that his stuff takes a little bit of time to grow on me, but I'll also say his lyrics feel a little undercooked too. The sort of dance floor hookup jam that's very much in his wheelhouse, but feels a little lacking for detail and scope. Don't get me wrong, this is good, but at least right now it's not on the level of his best breakthrough singles, and I'll say it, the sooner he gets to working with One of Tricks Point Never and Arca like he's been saying that he will, it'll probably be for the better. And you know, it places me in an odd spot for this week, as while I've got the best and worst, there's not really a lot that really jumps out at either end. I'm a little bit surprised to admit it, but I'm giving Knowing You by Kenny Chesney the best of the week, with Take My Breath by The Weeknd with the honorable mention. And yes, I know, it's probably going to change and grow on me, I'll say it again, but as of now, not there yet. Now for the worst, I Hope You're Miserable Until You're Dead by Nessa Barrett does not work for me, with dishonorable mention going to SUV's Black on Black by Jack Harlow and Pooh Shiesty. I was tempted to throw KSI and Lil Wayne in for that spot, but you know, at least that song's redeeming moments and hilarious parts kind of pulled through, whereas Pooh Shiesty, he just sucks. Now next week, I still get the impression it's going to be a little bit quiet for another week or two. Thank God I'm going to be busy next week, we'll have to see. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.